Chapter 6. Addison stepped into the interrogation room, her keen eyes quickly scanning Carter Mills, who was settled uncomfortably in a metal chair behind a featureless steel table. Javier moved in beside her, his posture rigid. Addison supposed he might still be a bit pissed off that Carter had shoved him and tried running away. There was only one other chair in the room, placed across from Carter Mills. Addison took it while Javier stood in the front corner, arms crossed. This was how they'd always handled interrogations during their almost 2-year span together. In the beginning, Javier had done most of the talking, but as Addison had become more adept at it, she'd started taking that role. She enjoyed the puzzle of it all, of deciphering lies and secrets with questions that seemed innocent on the surface but were layered with traps. As for Carter Mills, he had lost a lot of the bravado he'd shown out at the worksit. He shifted in his seat, the handcuffs clinking softly against the coal table, a sound that echoed through the otherwise silent room. Addison noted the subtle change. The cocky worker she had seen mere hours ago was replaced by a man who understood that things were serious now, that the next few minutes could be detrimental to him. "Mr. Mills," Addison began, her voice firm and devoid of warmth, "let's talk about where you've been over the last week." She folded her hands on the table, leaning forward slightly to close the distance between truth and deceit. "The entire week? Working. You can check that with my supervisor." "Yeah, but what about after work?" "Usual stuff." "Like what?" Addison pressed. She knew he was simply trying to dodge her questions, but what Carter didn't know was that she could do this all day. "Like going to the bar." "Which bar?" Her persistence was already wearing on Carter, his patience unraveling. She could actually see the moment it happened, and she had to bite back a stubborn little smile. "Look, I get around, okay?" Carter spat back, frustration cracking his facade. "3 nights ago," Javier said, leaning against the wall, arms folded. "Where were you?" A pause hung in the air, charged with Carter's hesitation. Finally, with a resigned sigh, he admitted, "At a strip club." His voice was softer now, tinged with the realization that his alibi did little to extricate him from suspicion. "Which one?" "Lucky Lounge. Christ, do you want to know the names of the girls too?" "That might be helpful," Addison said, unable to help herself. "Can you prove this?" Javier asked, sidestepping Addison's little jab. "Yeah, I got receipts," Carter muttered, deflated. "It was all electronic, all on my phone." "Good," she replied curtly. A receipt meant time-stamped evidence, a potential corroboration of his story, or a glaring contradiction. "That's a good start. Now what about the rest of the week?" As the interrogation continued, Addison remained focused, her senses sharpening with each detail. She became aware that she needed some coffee, a nice strong cup of it. She'd only had the equivalent of 2 this morning, and she was a 5 cups a day sort of girl. But she looked past the craving and kept pushing, listening to Carter Mills list the bars he'd been to over the course of the past week. He even named a few people he'd bumped into, people who could back up his stories. He did it begrudgingly, but he seemed to understand the gravity of the situation well enough. When he'd done his best to offer up his alibis, Carter let out a huge sigh. "What else?" he asked, almost as a challenge. And Addison was happy for it, because he'd stepped right into her trap. "Let's talk about Emily Torres," Addison said, her voice carrying an edge as sharp as a scalpel. "Were you the one leaving letters on her car?" Carter shifted in his seat again, the metal chair groaning under his weight. His face, previously an inscrutable mask, turned the shade of overripe strawberries. He tried to hold Addison's stare, but his gaze flitted away quickly. "Yeah," he confessed, the word escaping like steam from a pressure valve. It was just a joke at first." "Harassing women is your idea of a joke?" Addison's tone remained level, clinical, but she felt irritation building up inside her, born of men who thought talking shit to women was just harmless fun. She'd seen it far too many times in her childhood and as an agent. "Look, I know it wasn't right," Carter stammered, his hands clenching and unclenching on the table. "It got out of hand, I guess." "Out of hand?" she echoed, scoffing. And what about other women? At the work sites? Any jokes with them too? Carter's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed thickly. Sometimes. He averted his eyes, as if his shame could be dodged through sheer will. But I never acted on anything. Look, I know it's messed up, but I was just teasing, being a dick, you know? Oh, I can see that. Javier leaned forward from his position against the wall, his shadow falling across the table. We're going to need to see your phone, Carter. And you can make this easy or hard. Cooperate and it might help you down the line. Otherwise, we'll go through the hassle of getting a warrant, and trust me, we will get one. Do you get that? Carter locked eyes with Javier, searching for a bluff that wasn't there. The seasoned agent's expression was granite, impenetrable. In that moment, Carter seemed to shrink further into himself, the defiance that had carried him this far deflating like a punctured balloon. All right, he relented, the fight draining out of him. I'll show you. But it's not like you think. Then what is it? Addison snapped. Let's just get this over with, Carter muttered, pulling his phone from his pocket with his cuffed hands and sliding it across the table. He looked like he might be close to tears, and Addison was a bit ashamed that she enjoyed the sight of it. Addison picked up the phone and touched the screen. The screen lit up, casting her face in a pale glow. What's the passcode? 7119. Addison unlocked the phone, pulling up the photo album. It was evident right away that there was nothing there. She closed out of it and then found the icon for a photo and file sharing service. She opened it up and instantly found what she was looking for. The images flickered across the screen, candid shots of women caught unawares, their privacy cleaved open and laid bare. Some were clearly zoomed in from a distance, catching women in short skirts, little strips of underwear showing. She saw one image that looked to have been taken from beneath a set of bleachers, catching a woman's backside. Carter watched from across the table, his posture caged, his hands clenching and unclenching under scrutiny. Talk me through these, Carter, Addison demanded, her voice flat, betraying none of the disgust that knotted her stomach. He swallowed hard, a sheen of sweat on his brow. I was thinking you guys had come to see me at the worksite because of the pictures. That's why I ran. The words tumbled out, quick and desperate. They're just pictures. I never hurt anyone. I swear it. Did they know you were taking these photos? Did they consent? Addison probed further, each question a scalpel peeling back layers of deceit. No, he confessed, the word barely audible. Then yes, you did hurt them. Even if they're unaware of these pictures, you hurt them. Javier sighed from over her shoulder. Carter, some of these girls do appear to be on the young side. You understand the kind of charges this might mean, right? Carter nodded, his head bowed, shame etching deep furrows in his weathered face. I think maybe a few look at young. I didn't check, I swear. I didn't think... That's the problem, isn't it? Addison interjected coldly. You didn't think about them at all. Across the table, Carter Mills crumpled, his tough demeanor dissolving into the palpable air of guilt and regret that now filled the room. Addison stood locking her gaze onto Carter. Quite frankly, this is reprehensible, she began, her voice steady and stern. You've violated these women's lives, their security. Your alibis might save you from the murder charge we were seeking, but make no mistake, Carter. What you've done here is a crime. You will be held accountable. It won't just disappear. She was fuming, beyond angry. She knew she had to leave the room soon, or she was going to start speaking and acting unprofessionally. She signaled to Javier as she made her way to the door. Carter remained seated, a man finally coming to terms with the gravity of his own misdeeds. Is there anything else you want to tell us, Carter? Javier asked as Addison grabbed the door handle. Anything you might have overlooked? No, the pictures, the notes. Yeah, that was all me. But I swear, I have no idea what you're talking about with the murder charges. Addison paused for a moment, an idea suddenly coming to her. She approached the table again and leaned forward, her elbows on the cold metal surface. She was threading the needle carefully, looking for openings, weaknesses in his story. The maze back at the brewery, constructed with an unnerving precision, a labyrinth that had become Emily's tomb, would not leave her alone. "Tell me, Carter," Addison began, her voice measured. "Have you purchased a lot of wooden pallets recently?" The question seemed to catch him off guard, and for a moment he seemed utterly perplexed. "Pallets? No, I haven't." Confusion lined his forehead. "I'm not sure I'd even know where to get them." "Really?" Addison pressed, tilting her head slightly. "Someone with your experience, your knowledge of construction." Carter shrugged, an attempt at nonchalance that failed. Truthfully, most people into that, upcycling or whatever, they just take them from construction bins. Nobody really buys that stuff anymore. It's all about finding it for free. She watched him closely, searching for a tell, a slip, anything. But his answer seemed genuine, his ignorance too detailed to be feigned. Her hunch, it seemed, had come to nothing. "Thank you, Carter. We appreciate your cooperation," Addison said, standing up. Her words were polite, but her tone was flat, professional detachment, concealing the frustration and anger simmering beneath the surface. Javier gave Carter a long, hard look before following Addison out of the interrogation room. The door closed with a decisive click behind them as they stepped out into the hallway. "His alibis seem solid," Javier murmured, thumbs hooked in his belt loops. "But we'll run them down, make sure they check out." Addison only nodded, her brain already racing ahead. They needed to pivot, refocus. Carter was a detour on the road to finding Emily's killer. Now it was time to return to the main path. "Pass the info up the chain," she suggested, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We need to keep moving." "Sounds like a plan," Javier confirmed, his expression serious as he nodded. "Meet me in your office in 15 minutes. See you then." With a brief mutual nod, they parted ways. As Addison walked alone, her steps echoed hollowly against the floor. And God help her, she couldn't help but wonder what Emily's footsteps had sounded like in that cold, dark maze while she'd slowly succumbed to a primal fear. Her life torn away, and her final moments filled with terror. And even worse than that, Addison could far too easily place Jane, her sister, in that same spot. A girl, lost in the darkness, with the mean and hungry world at her back. Addison allowed the image of Jane one more moment in her head before she forced it away, bringing all of her focus and attention back to the case.